and they ate from the tree. Now God comes to Adam and says, you ate from the tree I told you not to eat from. Naturally, we assume that God is shouting. He's angry and he's about to smite somebody. That may be one interpretation, but not necessarily. God is not angry. God is marveling. How did you know? I told you not to.
I'm sorry. How did you know? Wow. Well done. You ate the fruit. This is what I wanted. Jeez. Eve, you told him to do that? Nah, well done, my daughter. I'm proud of you. That's what God was saying, apparently. Because in Kabbalah, they believe that the Jewish people have a different level of soul. They've got more levels of soul than the Goyim, than the Gentile. They believe that the Jew has 5 levels of the soul. The Yechidah, which is the divine spark. They have the Chaya, the Ruach. They have the Nishma and the Nefesh. 5 levels of the soul. But the Gentile doesn't have 5 levels of the soul. They don't have that divine spark. And they believe that every single Jew has a divine spark, has this direct level of the soul from God, and it's their role and their position to collect all the sparks around the world and to rectify and be a light unto this world, and it's their job to govern. Ironically, the mission that he believes God gave to this Adam and Eve is the exact mission that Christ took upon himself. The mission of bringing order to this low world, right? Bringing tikkun, which is actually a Kabbalistic term for rectification. Christ came to actually bring rectification to this world. He is the bridge, the hypostatic union between God and man. He is the bridge between this plane and the higher planes. And he's even more the bridge because he physically came down and had a human experience while yet being God in nature. Hello, hidden ones. Welcome to another video. And today we'll be reacting to Rabbi Manis Friedman. He's a very popular rabbi from the Hasidic Jewish community. And we're going to listen to his breakdown of Adam and Eve. I suspect he's going to go at this from a Kabbalistic angle. And for those that don't know what Kabbalah is, it's essentially Jewish mysticism. And it just basically is deeper spiritual breakdowns and allegories of the scriptures. And I could go much deeper into what it is, but just a basic explanation is it's just a esoteric, mystic explanation of the Old Testament, of the Torah. So let's listen to what Rabbi Manis Friedman has to say about Adam and Eve. And yeah.
The Torah, or what is called the Bible, is a divine work written by God, dictated by God. And therefore, it has multiple levels, multiple layers of meaning. And we can go on forever finding deeper and richer insights and meaning into the familiar stories and teachings and commandments of the Torah. A really good example is the story of Adam and Eve. Everybody knows the story, but here's the rest of the story. The way it's read, in its simple literal meaning, God created Adam and Eve. He put them in the Garden of Eden. He said to them, or actually he said to Adam, of all the trees you may eat the fruits, but the tree of knowledge of good and evil you may not eat from it. For the day you eat from it, you will die. According to the historians, this was 9 hours after they were created in the Garden of Eden. 9 hours after they were created, they were told not to.
So when he says, according to the historians, this was 9 hours after they were created, just so that you know, he is most likely referring to the Gemara, which is the Jewish oral traditions outside of the Bible. So the writings of the sages, the Chazal, the rabbis of the time of Christ, even before then. And it's basically a collection of traditions, the Mishnah, the Talmud, and that's where he's getting that information from when he says according to the historians, just so that you know.
To eat from the tree of knowledge. Well, an hour later, the 10th hour, they ate from the tree of knowledge.
And these historians are supposed to know the exact hour that Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So again, take it for what you want, whether you consider that credible or not. I personally don't. I don't think that anybody knows what hour they ate the fruit, personally. But yeah, there is a lot of guesswork, and there's a lot of presumption. And I mean, the oral tradition has its benefits. It does give us a great insight to the culture and understanding of the Jews and how they interpreted the Torah and the Old Testament. And many of our ideas do come from the oral tradition. But when it comes to these details that no one could really know, like what hour they ate the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, I think it's a bit suspect, if you ask me. But let's continue.
Now God comes to Adam and says, "You ate from the tree I told you not to eat from?" Adam says, "She gave it to me and I ate it." Like it's her fault. God says to Eve, to Chava, "What did you do?" She says, "The snake." The snake made me do it, convinced me, tricked me. So God says, "Okay, because you did this, by the sweat of your brow will you make bread, and you will give birth to children in pain. And the snake will be your enemy. He will bite you and you will beat him." Anyway. Okay, that's the story. It has many moral lessons, but the facts of the story don't really come together very well. Just quickly, a list of questions. Number one, God spoke to Adam and said, "Don't eat from that tree." An hour later, he ate from the tree. Is there something wrong with God? Is it what? He's not impressive? Not convincing? You can dismiss him an hour later? It's not like...
Yeah, Rabbi Manis Friedman, it's called disobedience. And human beings do that today, where, and you see this throughout the Old Testament as well, where God clearly stipulates and commands the standard, the law, the Torah. And later on, not long after, people disobey. So I don't think that there's a hidden, well, God knew this was going to happen and wanted it to happen and all this other stuff. I think it's just human nature for human beings, especially when sin came into the world, to be pulled and gripped by the flesh. Obviously, in this instance, is prior to the fall. So, yes, why did Adam have this? Why did Adam fall prior to there being any sinful nature, right? And it really goes back to the idea of free will. Even though they didn't have a sinful nature, they did have the will to choose either disobeying God or obeying God. The same kind of will that the angels had before they fell, and even after. So it doesn't mean that he wasn't able to disobey just because, the sin didn't enter into the world yet. And of course, he was convinced to eat the fruit because of Eve. But let's get a bit more into the video because I'm already starting to see where this is going.
It's not like Adam wasn't sure that God meant him. You imagine Adam saying, "Are you talking to me?" Yeah, I'm talking to you. There's nobody else around. So God speaks to Adam up close and personal and says, "Don't do this." And an hour later, he can do it. God is not very effective. Something's wrong. When God spoke to the Jewish people at Mount Sinai, everybody fainted. Adam just dismisses it. And then, question number 2, what's wrong with Adam? He was created by God. He had no birth traumas. His mother didn't traumatize him in the toilet training. He didn't have bad friends. He didn't grow up in a bad neighborhood. And he didn't have an evil inclination that tempts you to sin. He didn't have that. What's wrong with him? Then you find out that the tree was actually a fig tree. Come on, how tempting is that?
Again, a lot of this information that isn't stipulated in Bereshit in Genesis is most definitely coming from the oral tradition. And again, I'm not the biggest hater of the oral tradition. I do find a lot of value in it, and I often refer to it for a lot of context when it comes to interpreting the Old Testament, as well as just understanding the deeper meaning of particular passages. But when we start adding in these fillers and assumptions, such as, the fruit of the tree of good and evil was a fig tree, or, he ate the fruit, 8 hours after he was created, like all of these, assumptions. For me, I don't take that as a fact. They basically, the reason why a lot of the stuff is valid in his eyes and many of the Jewish believers is because they believe that the Talmud was transmitted by God. So they believe that when God gave Moses the 10 Commandments, when God gave Moses the Torah, he didn't just give him that, he gave him the oral Torah, the oral traditions. And those oral traditions were then passed down from Moses to Joshua, from Joshua to the elders, and then from the elders, the priests, and then the priests, the prophets, the men of great assembly, from men of great assembly, the sages of old, the Pharisaic, rabbis during the time of Christ and even before. So there's this chain of transmission that supposedly goes all the way back to Moses. And everything that's within the Talmud and the Mishnah and many of these Jewish texts outside of the canon, those texts are seen just as divinely inspired as the Bible itself. So as you can imagine why he's so confident about these particular details that are nowhere found in the Bible. It's because he's reading a whole other Bible, essentially, to come to these conclusions. But you're going to see how wild this gets when you rely on these things outside of the Word of God. You're going to see how wild this gets. Pay close attention.
Irresistible? Next question. God says to Adam, "The day you eat from that tree, you will die." Was death a threat? Did it mean anything to Adam at all? He was 9 hours old. Okay, he had the maturity of a 20-year-old, but he was 9 hours into life. Did he already have a survival instinct? Did he even know what death meant? Nothing ever died. That's strange. Next question. What kind of a mixed message is it to say, don't eat from the tree, for the day you eat from it, you'll die? There's a day when I will eat from it? See, it doesn't say if you eat from it. It says the day you eat from it, you'll die. Confusing. Next question. God asks him, "You ate from the tree I told you not to eat from." He blames her. This is too much corruption too quickly. He was already so corrupt that he can't even be honest. That doesn't say much for the human race. And then she blames the snake? This is weird. Then God...
By the way, he's trying to build up to his position or his interpretation of it. He's asking these questions and framing them in the way that demonstrate obscurity or demonstrate the narrative not making sense, so that when he explains the real interpretation of the narrative, then you're going to be like, oh, that makes sense, because yes, how can this happen if this, or how can this happen if that? So he's building up to the point to where he explains what he believes the story was all about. But so far, he's just asking a bunch of questions to get you to think, well, what does it really mean then? So that's what he's doing right now, just so that you know. Nothing impressive for me personally, because I know where this is going. And like I said, this is Kabbalah, but I'll let you decide what you think.
God says, because you did this, here are the consequences. Pain in childbirth by the sweat of your brow. Whoa, that was not the deal. The deal was the day you eat from it, you'll die. Now God is saying, oh, no, not just die. First you'll suffer, then you'll die. Like that bumper sticker. Life stinks, then you die. That was not the deal. And you can't, it's not right to add more punishment after the fact. The ultimate question is this. It's a discouraging story. It's a depressing story. Why would the Torah begin? I mean, okay, it happened. Doesn't mean you have to tell me the story right at the beginning of the Torah. Because if a person who had no traumas, no bad friends, no bad influences, no evil inclination, is given one commandment and he doesn't last an hour, what chance do we have? It's not a good story to start the Torah with. So that's on one level. Let's try another level. Back up a little bit. Where did Adam and Eve come from? They were created by God. God fashioned their body out of earth and then breathed a soul into them. Where was that soul? So the story begins. There were two souls in heaven, a male and a female, and God said to them, I'm going to send you down to the lowest of all possible worlds, invest you into a physical body made out of earth, and you're going to elevate that world, the lowest of all worlds, and make it holier and more godly than heaven.
Okay. So he's getting there now. So what he's saying is, this is the first point of, or the first red flag, let's just call it red flag. He said there were two souls, male and female, in heaven. And then the souls were sent down to the lowest world to bring order and godliness. First problem is, this also presumes that the souls, or you are a soul without a body. Because I've explained this in a previous video. In Bereshit, chapter 2, when God makes Adam, he makes him from the dust of the earth, and he breathes the breath of life into his nostrils. The word for breath of life in Hebrew is nishmat, which comes from neshama, right? And the word rendered soul is nephesh. So when you look at the actual passage and the way it's constructed, there is a formula. It's the combination of the dust, which is the vessel, and the breath of life, the animating force, which makes a living soul. So you can't say there can be a soul outside of the body, because the formula is already given in Genesis 2. The soul is a result of the combination of the breath of life and the vessel. So to say that Adam and Eve's souls were in heaven before they were sent down on an assignment to bring order to the lowest world, that already contradicts what constitutes a soul based on when Adam is created. Notice how it says he became a living soul. It doesn't say he was a soul before and then went into this body. It says he became a living soul. So that's the first error. The second error is he's saying that they were sent to the lowest world to bring godliness. Now, the world was void and formless. There was nothing there. So this idea of the world being corrupt, and then God sends these representatives to bring order to a corrupt world. When I read Genesis, everything was good. As God was creating from the void and from the vacuum, everything was good. It was in its perfect state. There was no corruption. There was no evil in the world. So I don't know what they're coming to fix. There was no evil there. I could go deeper into it because I actually studied the Kabbalah and I know what he's trying to say. And I actually used to use this argument because atheists would kind of throw at us as Christians, why did God make Adam and Eve knowing that they would sin and that they would fall away? It's almost as if he intended it to happen. And from what you're going to see with Rabbi Manis Friedman, the Kabbalistic view, or at least his view, is that it was part of the plan. And it's a way to kind of employ that it was part of God's genius that Adam and Eve fell. Not only was it part of his genius, he wanted them to do it, and they were sent on an assignment to do it. Again, we're going to see how we make sense of all this, but that's his position.
Yes, they accepted the mission. Now they open their eyes. They're in the Garden of Eden. God says to Adam, of all the trees you may eat, but not this one. Now, just picture them sitting there, puzzled. We're supposed to fix this world, elevate it. All the trees are kosher. They don't need elevating. There's one tree that is not so kosher. Something's wrong with it. It needs fixing, but we're not allowed to eat it. So what are we doing here? What happened to our mission? Where's our job? They were puzzled. And then Adam said, it's quite confusing. Did God said not to eat it, or did he say someday you will eat it? Because he said the day you eat from it, you'll die. Eve said, it's not a mixed message and it's not confusing. God is asking us to choose. Make a choice. Don't eat from it and live, or eat from it and die. It's your choice. So Adam said, well, that's a pretty simple choice to make. Let's not eat from it and live. Eve said, God wants us to eat from it. He's hoping we eat from it. And Adam said, how do you know that? She said, because our job is in the lowest world, and this is not the lowest world. There's a world in which people die. A world of mortality. That's the lowest world, and that's where our job is. He wants us to eat from the tree and go.
Now, interestingly, so just to break down what he's just said, he believes that God wanted Eve to eat the tree of good and evil. He wanted both of them to do it, right? And the reason why he wanted them to do it was because, remember the initial mission, to send these souls to the lowest world so that they could bring order and godliness to it. Well, Eve is like, it's not really the lowest world because God said that there's a world or the place where people die. And we can bring that about by eating the fruit. So in order for us to bring order to the lowest world, we need to bring about that world where there's sin. So God actually wants us to eat the fruit so we can bring about sin and then bring order to that. I'm sorry, but this just sounds insane. And when you scan and think about it and you study the esoteric orders, the occult orders, I think I forgot the name of the order. I think it's the Golden Dawn or something. But there's an order that believes in order to bring about the return of Christ, they need to cause more havoc and chaos in the world and calamity. And it makes total sense that they're drawing from this Kabbalistic idea of bringing chaos into the world. And through chaos comes order. It's this kind of, formula or system within the occult world. They believe that chaos is good because chaos will bring about order. And it also connects to the Hegelian dialect of, causing the problem or causing calamity, then providing a solution. So this is probably the same mindset the globalists and the rulers of this world have in regards to why the puppet masters are causing all this calamity through race wars, actual wars, political, economic crashes, diseases, calamities, all of these things. It's because it's not organic. It's planned because they're trying to bring about more chaos so that they believe that, the final return of Christ or the rectification of the world, the heavens and the earth can happen through bringing about that chaos. I just think it's incredibly foolish to think that God wants you to bring more evil into this world. And it also defeats the objective of the crucifixion. The crucifixion, Christ came to rectify and to repair. Ironically, the mission that he believes God gave to Adam and Eve is the exact mission that Christ took upon himself. The mission of bringing order to this low world, right? Bringing tikkun, which is actually a Kabbalistic term for rectification. Christ came to actually bring rectification to this world. He is the bridge, the hypostatic union between God and man. He is the bridge between this plane and the higher planes. And he's even more the bridge because he physically came down and had a human experience while yet being God in nature. So Christ actually fulfills this plan more than he even knows. But what he's saying is completely false. God did not want Adam and Eve to eat the tree of good and evil. Because then you would also be saying that God wanted them to bring about the lowest world, but then he punishes them. He punishes them for eating the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Why would he punish them if he wanted them to do it? And it wasn't small punishments. He said that Eve will have birth pains. Adam would have to till the ground and sweat before he eats. There'll be calamity between man and woman. The animals started eating each other and, started being death and diseases. So all of these curses came upon humanity because we invited sin and just God wanted that to happen. That kind of makes him immoral to a certain extent, because now not only is God sanctioning immorality, but he wants them to bring immorality into the world. That sounds a lot like Satan. And another thing before we continue, when you actually study Gnosticism, which I believe is another root of Kabbalah, when you study Gnosticism, they actually believe that Satan was the good guy. They call him Sophia, and it's supposed to be this entity of wisdom, usually depicted as a serpent, ironically, right? Like a womanly serpent kind of figure. And just like Prometheus in Greek mythology, the light bearer is actually there to give you the truth, to deliver you from the tyrannical gods, and to give you the truth about who you really are, and you're a god within yourself, and knowledge is power, wisdom. It's all about wisdom with the Gnosticism thing, right? And this is where it comes from. It's this same lie that's taught within Kabbalah that God wanted them to bring calamity. But hey, let's see what else he has to say. It's already a done deal. It's already been smoked. But let's see what else he has to say.
Into the world of mortality. Adam said, God put us here. Can't be a mistake. So if he puts us here, he must want us here. And Eve said, no, it's not the way it works. God takes you to where your job is, but you have to volunteer to cross that border. God will take you to the threshold, but whether you enter that door or not is up to you. He wants us to volunteer. Adam said, makes a lot of sense. And they ate from the tree. Now God comes to Adam and says, you ate from the tree I told you not to eat from. Naturally, we assume that God is shouting. He's angry and he's about to smite somebody. That may be one interpretation, but not necessarily. God is not angry. God is marveling. How did you know?
I told
you not to.
I'm sorry. How did you know? Wow. Well done. You ate the fruit. This is what I wanted. Jeez. Eve, you told him to do that? Nah, well done, my daughter. I'm proud of you. That's what God was saying, apparently. Apparently. I'm sorry, this is absolute garbage. I don't know how much more I can get through this. Okay? You don't think God was angry when he confronted them about eating the tree of knowledge of good and evil? If you don't think God was angry or disappointed, you probably don't know how to read. Because someone that isn't angry wouldn't give out a bunch of curses, wouldn't cast them out, throw them out. Even having a cherubim guarding the Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, having a cherubim guarding it with flaming swords, saying, "You ain't bounce, get out of here, you ain't coming back here." You telling me God weren't angry? Furthermore, he punishes the serpent by saying he will, go in his belly for all the days of his life, and he gives a prophecy saying that the seed of the woman will crush the head of the serpent, and the serpent will bite its heel. So God is giving out all these prophecies, all these curses, banishing people out, and in that whole situation, well done, Eve, good job. It's not that's one interpretation. No, the logical conclusion is they messed up. Because if that wasn't the case, then it defeats the objective of the crucifixion, of the atonement of sin, which is the sacrifice, the korban, right, the offering. It defeats all of these things. Because then it makes sin part of the plan. Like, this is amazing. God wanted this. And I've heard the argument about the crucible. And yes, the crucible is correct to an extent. Having trials and tribulation does build character. But it's not to say that God's perfect plan is for every human being to suffer, so that in that suffering, we now become better human beings. No, suffering came as a result of our disobedience, but even in our suffering, God has provided a provision for us out of our suffering and to endure. It's not suffering is what I want for these people. No, it's suffering has happened as a consequence of our poor decision, but even in that suffering, there's a provision out of the suffering and a provision to better ourselves insofar as becoming more like Christ, becoming more like the image bearers we were meant to be. Because if that's the case, paradise is coming, heaven is coming. There's not going to be any sin or suffering, no iniquity in heaven. That's clearly what God wants. That's the end goal. The end goal is usually what someone wants, right? If God wanted calamity and evil in this world, then that would be the end goal. But the end goal is paradise. This is just a bump in the road. Yeah, this is just a little roadblock, what we're going for right now. This wasn't part of the plan. And if you believe that this is part of the plan, maybe you're not talking about God. Maybe you're talking about Satan. Because the only person really pushing for the iniquity and evil that's happening in this world is Satan. And we know for obvious reasons because his time is running out. And again, I would like to understand, and this might be another reaction video, what is the Kabbalistic, I already know the answer to this, but what is the Kabbalistic Orthodox Jewish understanding of the role of Hasatan, of Hillel, of Lucifer? What is his role? Because in all this, we've not heard about Satan at all, right? It's just God and Adam and Eve. As if Satan wasn't the Nachas, wasn't the snake in the garden. As if Satan wasn't there at all. So, but hey.
To eat from it, but you understood that I was hoping you would? How did you know that? Being a new, fresh, pure, innocent soul, Adam said, I didn't know. She knew. So God says to Eve, how did you know? She said, you know what the snake told me? Sounded like that's where our job would be. The snake said, when you eat from that tree, you will be like God. You will know good and evil. Well, good and evil, that needs fixing. So God said, that's great. That's exactly what I meant by it's not good for man to be alone, because Adam would not have eaten from the tree.
And what he's referring to here is, in Kabbalah, they believe that women have more intuition. And it points back to the Sephirot, the Kabbalistic tree of life, which are attributes, divine attributes that are found within man and also are like the foundations or building blocks of the universe and how everything was created. Going back to the emanations and the expansions and Ein Sof, right? The Tzimtzum. They believe that women have more intuition and it's based off in Genesis when Eve is created. It uses the word bana. It actually uses the word constructed rather than created. And that word bana, the Hebrew letters of bana, they also have the same letters in the Kabbalistic Sephirot, bina, which is part of the top 3 levels. The first, I think it's called the first phase of Kabbalah. And bina is intuition. And they believe that Eve was created with more intuition. That's why she knew it was a good thing for them to eat the fruit. That's why she was the one that was communicating with the serpent, but Adam wasn't there or wasn't the one kind of interacting with the serpent, because she had that great intuition of the spiritual realm or the greater purpose. And do I believe women have more intuition? I can't say that's a fact, but I do think that that's plausible. I have seen that in my own life, and I do think that there are different qualities between male and female. But to say that because women have more intuition than men, or could have more intuition than men, it was a good thing that Eve was beguiled by the serpent and then got Adam to fall, I think that's the wrong conclusion there. Because obviously God has given us the order when it comes to leading the home spiritually. It's the man. Even in church, when we take the temple or even the tabernacle, the Mishkan, or as an example, the Levites were men, and it's the priestlyhood that is predominantly male that is leading worship and leading the spiritual matters. And even you have the Nebi'im, the prophets, majority of them were men. We had a few women prophets as well. But men were leading the spiritual education of the people. And they were the spiritual leaders of the people. It's not to say women don't have their place in the scriptures and in furthering, the spiritual nature of the nation or guiding people in any fashion or way. Of course they do. We've got Deborah, we've got Huldah. There's many female prophetesses in the Bible. And we understand that women have stepped up where men have failed. But what was the initial plan that God had instituted? It was that man would lead. Adam came first, then Eve. Eve came from Adam. So there is an order, right? There's a hierarchy, at least socially and in terms of authority. Not in spirit, not in nature. Women and man are equal in nature, but they are not equal in roles. They have different roles. Different purposes and roles, but they're equal in nature. But what he's doing here is just complete garbage. I don't know what to say. It was part of the plan for this whole people to die of cancer, all these people dying in war, starvation. You're giving the atheists a field day with this. They're gonna love this because they already think God is evil. Even when we don't believe God wanted this to happen. But now you're saying God wanted it to happen? Jeez. I don't know how you're going to deal with these atheists. But
so then God says, let me tell you more about this world that you're going down to. It's a mortal world. It also has pain, struggle, disappointment. It's an uphill battle. It's the lowest world. Are you sure you want to try to fix it? They said yes. If that's what you need done, that's what we will do. That's the story of Adam and Eve. Quite different from the conventional understanding. God was not angry. They were not punished because they never committed a sin. Now, we refer to that as the sin of the tree of knowledge. But the word that we use in Hebrew is not really translated as sin. There are other words for sin. The word chet, which is how we describe the action in the Garden of Eden, the word chet doesn't mean sin. The word chet means a step down. Demoted. They took a giant step down, but there was no violation, there was no sin, there was nothing malicious, there was nothing lustful. It was innocent and it was correct, but it was a step down. In fact, when God said, "Don't eat from that tree, the day you eat from it, you'll die," He wanted them to eat from the tree, then why did he say don't? Well, to give them a choice. But God can't say a falsehood. When God said don't eat from the tree, it meant I don't want you to eat from the tree. But he did want them to eat from the tree. Here's what you really, really need to know. God said don't eat from the tree, because you're going to die. Your children are going to be imperfect. They won't know me. I don't want this to happen. But I'm hoping you do it, because otherwise the vast eternal plan will never be fulfilled.
And what's that?
So God was saying,
what's the vast eternal plan?
I don't want you to do this, but I need you to do this.
I need you to bring sin into this world.
Like a king
Crazy.
sending his army off to war.
Crazy.
If he's a good king, he doesn't want to. He hates it. But has to happen. So when God said, don't eat from the tree, he meant, I really don't want this to happen, but I hope you eat from the tree because it has to happen. What does this tell us about God? He's not sitting up there in heaven, unaffected, invulnerable, untouched by anything that happens to us, and he just watches us to see when he should smite us. That's not God. God made an investment in creation. Like a man getting married. He has to make some sacrifices. He has to give up a lot of stuff. But how else is he going to have a soulmate? So God sacrifices, does things against his own will, goes out of his comfort zone in order to have this creation, which is a relationship. And that's why everything we do is so important to him. So it touches him, it affects him, gives him pleasure, gives him pain. You say, how can God have pleasure? How can God have pain? Yeah, not the way we do. Our pleasure is feeble and our pain is pathetic. His pain is infinite and his pleasure is eternal. Of course, he's more than us, not less, but it's worth it. If we do this, it will be worth it. And that was Eve's wisdom. She understood this. She heard God. Adam was so impressed with God that he didn't hear. He didn't hear it. How is it that she understood that they were not in the lowest world and they had to volunteer? And he missed it. He missed it because he was so overwhelmed by God's greatness that he didn't hear God's vulnerability. She heard it. And thanks to her, we are busy all these years elevating the world, fixing the world, fighting the injustice.
And this goes to another concept of, they believe that the Jewish people specifically, because not everybody, because in Kabbalah they believe that the Jewish people have a different level of soul. They've got more levels of soul than the Goyim, than the Gentile. They believe that the Jew has 5 levels of the soul. The Yechidah, which is the divine spark. They have the Chaya, the Ruach. They have the Nishma and the Nefesh. 5 levels of the soul. But the Gentile doesn't have 5 levels of the soul. They don't have that divine spark. And they believe that every single Jew has a divine spark, has this direct level of the soul from God, and it's their role and their position to collect all the sparks around the world and to rectify and be a light unto this world, and it's their job to govern and rule and make sure everything's in its right place. To tikkun, right, in Kabbalah, which means rectification. This is what they believe. So you can imagine the self, how can I even say, the boastfulness about it. We are the chosen people. Like from a Kabbalistic perspective as well. Like, we're the chosen people. We have the divine spark. They don't even have, the Gentile don't even have the same level of soul as us. And we're supposed to do tikkun. We're supposed to rectify the world and elevate the world. Me, us. We're the chosen people. Like, this is the kind of mindset that fuels a lot of, I hate to say it, the Zionist kind of prejudice against other people. And it's not all of them, of course. We're not generalizing on this channel. But this sort of ideology is racist and is dangerous. And it also makes God look immoral. There's no way around it. I don't know how you can sit there and say God wanted them to bring calamity into this world. To me, I think it's even harder to accept when you accept the New Testament. The New Testament makes it clear. Otherwise, it makes Christ's sacrifice for us just a big game. Because why would God want them to bring all of this into the world, to then send his son, despite him wanting this to happen anyway? Doesn't look good. But I think that's it for this video. I've heard enough of this guy. I'll be doing other videos on Kabbalah in the future, exposing and breaking it down. Yes, do I think there are aspects of Kabbalah that do point to true inner workings of the spiritual realm? Absolutely. I do think, like I said, I do believe women have binah, that have intuition. I think there are elements of Kabbalah that are true, but unfortunately, a lot of the aspects of Kabbalah do seem to come from some form of Gnosticism, and it's this idea essentially of reaching union with God, becoming God essentially, but I don't see Christ in it. This is where it becomes problematic for the Messianics or Christians, because the path of sanctification is through the Holy Spirit, through being made like Christ, being made a new creature. And there is a path to union with God and sanctification on this earth and after, in the world to come. But with Kabbalah, there is this internal alchemy ladder and process of reaching that oneness with God, and nowhere is Christ in it. So this is where it becomes problematic. Can you reach oneness with God without Christ? Is that possible? Can you reach sanctification without Christ, without the Spirit? Is that possible? But hey, that's it for the video. Hope you guys liked it, enjoyed it. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments about this guy. I think he's nuts, and he's not the only one that believes this. Millions and millions of Kabbalists. He's a Mekubal. A Mekubal is basically like a master Kabbalist, right? So he's been studying this for years. He's probably part of a long lineage of Kabbalists, so he really knows his Kabbalah. I don't believe in 90% of what he said in this video, but let me know what you guys think. Again, I used to use some of these arguments when I was backed into a corner by atheists about why God allowed all this stuff to happen, and it just doesn't end well, because then it makes God look really bad and it makes you look dumb. So let me know what you guys think about this video, and stay hidden.